Oh dear, I just finished writing the script for this video and it's 6,000 words long. Yeah, I have some thoughts on this. Having played Genshin Impact for more than a year and a half on multiple accounts and probably spending more money than I should have, wishing for 4-star characters in Genshin is consistently the worst feeling I can experience while playing. And I am talking feeling sick to my stomach levels of feeling terrible. This is really silly because 4-star characters are more common than the rarer and desirable 5-star characters, but the longer you play Genshin, the more you feel how hard it is to acquire 4 stars over 5 stars. And I've also seen others in the Genshin community echo similar sentiments on how frustrating it can be to acquire the lower rarity 4-star characters. And it doesn't have to be this way. The game could easily have a system to give more player control in acquiring 4 stars. And my goal for this video is to prove to you that it would be better for not just the player base, but also for Hoyoverse as a company to implement such a system. Now, if you are a new player or you are unfamiliar with Genshin in general, the idea of 4 stars being harder to get than 5 stars may sound really nonsensical, which is fair because how would it be possible that the 5-star characters, which you acquire at much lower rates, end up being easier to acquire than the 4 stars? To explain this, I need to do a breakdown on how you acquire characters in Genshin for anyone watching that may not be familiar with it. This breakdown may be obvious to anyone who has played Genshin, but I needed to establish a baseline regardless in order to make this entire video make any sense. So, when you want to acquire a character in Genshin, the main avenue you have for getting one or more copies of them is when they are running on a banner. For 5-star characters, most are limited, which means you can only acquire them while their banner is running in a 3-week time period. These banners have 1 limited 5-star character acquirable on them and 3 rate-up 4-star characters on them. 4-star characters are acquirable outside of the banner they first release on, but due to the roster being so large, the chance you get a specific one you may want if they are not featured on a banner is very low. And since players cannot control it any other way, we are ignoring that factor. Now, if you want the 5-star character in the banner, you have a 0.6% chance for any individual wish to be a 5-star character, and then there is a 50% chance that the 5-star character you get is the featured character, such as Zhongli on this banner. Or it would be one of 7 non-limited characters instead. That is called losing the 50-50. Being that you would generally wish on a banner you want the 5-star on, losing this 50-50 is considered a bad thing. But there is a very important side effect of losing the 50-50 that makes it easy to intentionally get the limited 5-star characters you want, which is that if you lose the 50% chance when going for a limited character like Zhongli, the next 5-star character you get is guaranteed to be that featured 5-star character on the banner. Additionally, this guarantee system can be carried over to different character banners in the future, which allows you to save a guarantee to be able to plan for the future more. There is also a system in the game that tracks how many wishes you make until you get a 5-star that increases the base 0.6% chance per wish to get a 5-star character, starting from the 74th wish, which is referred to as the pity system. Without getting into the stats too deeply, it ultimately means that if you want to acquire a specific limited 5-star character in Genshin Impact while their banner is active, you will be able to acquire them with around 160 total wishes. 180 is the technical maximum, but is extraordinarily unlikely to take that much, and the average is actually around 120. But 160 total wishes is the more realistic worst-case scenario that you as a player would need to plan around to get the 5-star character you want. It can take a long time to get that amount of wishes, but what is important for this video is specifically understanding that you can plan to get a limited 5-star character, knowing it will take at most a certain amount of wishes, around 160, to acquire them, which is the key to understanding why 4-star characters are harder to acquire than 5 stars. 4-star characters are acquired at much higher rates than 5-star characters. The base rate for any single wish to be a 4-star is 5.1%, and every 10th wish you are guaranteed to get a 4-star, which is the pity system for 4 stars. Now, you can get both 4-star characters or 4-star weapons as your 4-star rarity wish. When wishing on the character banner, you have an increased chance to get one of the 3 rate-up 4-star characters featured on banner. In the example for the current banner here, we have Zhongli as the featured limited 5-star, and then for 4-star characters we have Noelle, Sayu, and Freminet. The way that the rate-up 4-stars are acquired is such that when you get a 4-star, there is a 50% chance to get one of the 3 featured 4-star characters as your 4-star. The other 50% chance would get you one of the other 4-star characters or weapons in the game, which is a large pool, so you are unlikely to get anything specific you would want from it. But, just like with 5-star characters, if you do lose this 50-50 chance and do not get the rate-up characters, your next 4-star is guaranteed to be one of the 3 featured characters. One of the 3. Do you see the problem? As an example, here you can see I lost the 4-star 50-50 to a 4-star weapon, Sacrificial Sword, and then the next 4-star I got was guaranteed to be a banner character, in which case I got Noelle next. The notable detail here is that at this time, there is no way to guarantee getting a specific 4-star character that is featured on a banner. This means that if you want to acquire a specific 4-star character in Genshin and they are featured on a banner, you at best only ever have a 1 in 3 chance for the 4-star to be the character you wanted, specifically when you previously lost the 50% chance for a rate-up 4-star. As a quick side note for reference later, the average amount of wishes it takes to get a specific 4-star is about 1 in 30 wishes total, but due to the complete RNG, you are never guaranteed to get 1 every 30 wishes, so that is just the average you'd expect to trend towards with larger and larger datasets. But we'll get more into detail on that later in the video. What this all means is that it is completely RNG on which rate-up 4-star character you get from a banner, which, if you want a specific 4-star character, means you can never guarantee getting them from that banner. Another very notable aspect of 4-stars I need to mention quick in case you're unfamiliar with Genshin. Many 4-star characters need constellations, which is extra copies that unlock extra abilities in order to get the most out of them. So a big part of this issue is that players will often feel the need to pull for multiple copies of a 4-star character. Some 4-star characters can be more than functional with only 1 copy, but some want multiple copies to feel like they truly function as designed in the game, and it just really varies by that specific character. This all, of course, begs the question, does it even matter that 4-stars are more RNG to acquire than the 5-star characters? The answer is yes, in my opinion, and most of the Genshin player base probably shares that opinion, particularly the longer you would play the game. For newer players to Genshin, even for many months after playing, you're generally just kind of happy to get new 4-star characters or any characters in general, and so you kind of just leave whatever you get to the whims of RNG, and it's fine. So I would say for newer players who don't understand Genshin's wishing system well, or just play more casually, the issue of the complete RNG in acquiring 4-stars does not matter nearly as much to them. But for longer-term players, you realize that Genshin is a game where oftentimes the 4-star characters are just as important, or maybe just more fun to play to you, than some of the 5-star characters. Using myself as an example, I like getting 4-stars because despite them tending to be weaker than 5-star characters on paper, though there are several that are stronger than many limited 5-star characters too, they still tend to either have mechanically relevant aspects or just fun gameplay aspects such that I'd want to acquire 4-stars they release, especially the newer ones. One specific in-game example of this is a 4-star character named Kirara. This is the character you're seeing right now. They released her a few months ago, and I got lucky enough to get her and enjoyed playing her as a damage dealer, despite her intended use case not being a damage dealer. And I was successful clearing even the hardest content the game has to offer when using Kirara in the quote-unquote unintended way. The overall point I'm trying to make here is that there are a multitude of reasons a Genshin player may want to acquire a specific 4-star character over a 5-star character, regardless of when the 4-star character you want is on the banner for a 5-star character you want. And the longer you play Genshin, the more often you run into the situation of wanting to acquire a 4-star character that is running on a banner you do not want to wish on due to the 5-star character either being one you already have or one you don't want at all. This is a problem because unless you just want to spend truly egregious amounts of money in Genshin, you need to plan using the free in-game resources around the 5-star characters they release or that they rerun simply due to the 5-star characters being rare, so it takes many more resources on average to even have a chance at getting one of them. And due to there being a system that carries over the guarantee for your 5-star characters and your total wishing pity towards any future character you might want, It means that wishing for a specific 4-star character you want in Genshin can be really risky, to the point that wishing for a 4-star is risking sacrificing potentially months worth of free resources that could have been used for a future character you want, which is absurd to me. So since there is no way to guarantee a specific 4-star character you may want, it makes it even harder to justify and plan around said risks, such that people just do not wish specifically for 4-star characters if they are being healthy with managing the resources in Genshin despite probably wanting that character. And by healthy, I mean primarily not spending hundreds of dollars every few weeks in the game, not that you can't spend any money at all and still play healthily. Alright, so now that I spent way too long explaining the issue with acquiring 4-star characters you want in Genshin, I want to go over the solution to the problem. The simple solution is to implement a tweaked version of a system already in the game for the weapon banner, an epitomized path for 4-star characters. This, of course, is not a very new idea, but this could be implemented in as simple a way as the weapon banner is, where the end result would be something along the lines of, when you don't get the selected character for 3 4-stars in a row, your next one is guaranteed to be the one selected. It can literally be as simple as that. Discussing this more in depth will require going a little bit into the math, but it's mostly going to be a basic statistics overview to illustrate how Hoyoverse can keep making the same money on Genshin as they do now with such a system, and in fact I believe they may even make more while solving this problem for the player base. Now, this idea is not new, of course, but part of my reason in making this video is addressing the general sentiment I see in the Genshin community as to why Hoyoverse has not already added this system to allow players to guarantee a specific 4-star character. And that general sentiment is that, oh, it makes Hoyoverse too much money as it currently is, so they will never listen to the player base. I'm going to prove this wrong, which is going to require a bit of a dive into how Hoyoverse makes money, some basic statistic theory, and some further general discussion past that. You may find this all to be a bit excessive for what will amount to be a fairly simple conclusion, but I'm trying to be thorough in trying to break down the roadblocks that people throw up when discussing an issue related to the core of Genshin like this one. So, to start addressing this, we first need to ask the following question. How does Hoyoverse make money with Genshin Impact? Genshin is free to play and gets consistent updates every 6 weeks like clockwork, which means they need to make some money to be able to support the game's continued existence. This is just a fact. Ever heard of the turn of phrase as there's no such thing as a free lunch? Now, I'm being a bit pedantic here, but I'm stating this to establish that Genshin Impact does need to make some amount of money to be able to continue existing. If you got a free lunch, it's just because someone else paid for it. In this case, it's whales. So, the way Genshin exists is through the gacha system in acquiring characters, or to put it more simply, gambling. Gambling supports Genshin Impact's continued existence. You certainly don't need to spend money to play Genshin Impact, to be clear, but the baseline way that Genshin Impact makes money as a free-to-play game is that the entire game is designed around making you, the player, want to spend money. Whether that be for the dopamine of wishing itself, or just because you're willing to spend the money to get the thing you want, or getting you to spend money on the battle pass to have more resources to level up all those characters that you acquired through the wishing system. Everything in the game tries to subtly make you want to spend money, and it is all of it is centralized around the wishing system. When someone is playing Genshin, Hoyoverse's goal as a company trying to make money off of the game is to get you to wish more, regardless of if you have spent any money in the game or not already. This is because the more that you wish, the less resources you will have to get or do the things you want in-game, so you are more likely to spend money to get the things you want. You don't spend money in Genshin if you already have the resources you need to get that 5-star character that you've been wanting. Hoyoverse's #1 goal is to keep players wishing to keep their account in a state of low resources such that they feel the need to spend money. That's it. This means that Hoyoverse has failed when players to get to a state such as my account is in. I haven't wished much for an entire year, so I am in a situation where I have so many free resources saved up, there is no need for me to spend money, despite me being a player that would likely be labeled as a dolphin, which kind of refers to someone who is willing to spend money to get the things they want in Genshin. To expand on the examples of my account with specifics, since the start of the year I have wished for 2 5-star characters on my main account. I lost the 50-50 for one, saved my guarantee that I got to get a different 5-star a few months later, and since then I have only wished for single copies of 4-star characters on my main account. As such, my account is now at a state where I have so many resources saved that if I am responsible with things, I will never have to spend money in Genshin again due to my stockpile of resources, despite being someone who would be willing to spend money. On a business level, this means Hoyoverse has failed to convince me as a long-term player to continue wishing to such a degree that they made me go from someone who has spent a significant amount of money in the game with relative regularity to someone who spends very little. What I'm trying to illustrate with my example is that their business model has failed for players like me. Obviously, I don't mind having my account in a state where I don't need to spend money. I like saving money. But on a business level, it means Hoyoverse has failed. They're not making money off me anymore. Their model to make money is to try to get people to wish as much as possible. And anything they do to make their player base more likely to wish makes them more likely to make money. Hoyoverse makes money in Genshin by making the player wish. If players aren't wishing, they are not making money. By now, you may be saying,
"Okay, Mr. Deep Voice, we get it. Hoyoverse makes money by making us wish, duh. But what the heck does that have to do with a better system for acquiring 4-star characters?"
Well, my answer to that is thus. If we have the data to show that players would wish more if there was a system to guarantee getting specific 4-star characters, it would therefore mean that Hoyoverse has substantially increased the chance for more players to spend money in Genshin because people are wishing more. More people wishing equals more people that potentially spend money because more people are low on resources that might want things that they can't get without spending money. So we just need to get data that shows people would wish more if there were an epitomized pass system to guarantee 4-star characters. And if we have this data, I feel it's strong supporting evidence towards resolving this issue of acquiring 4-star characters. Luckily enough, I happen to be a Genshin Impact YouTuber with access to community polls to turn your thoughts into this data that we need. What a world. So, I polled my community, and it turns out 93% of 1,400 of you said, yes, you would wish more for 4-star characters if you could guarantee getting them. I expected most people to say yes, but 93% is actually higher than I would have guessed. And on the baseline premise that Genshin makes more money for Hoyoverse the more people wish, that means that there are 93% of players that might spend more money in the game that otherwise were never going to because they wish so little, such as long-term players like myself. Now, not all of the 93% are going to spend money, of course, and maybe my sample size is too small to draw a conclusion for the general player base, or it's biased towards more devout free-to-play players or others who may share my opinions, since it is my audience I polled, after all. Well, luckily, I am a Genshin YouTuber that knows other Genshin YouTubers, so I asked them to do a poll too. Much thanks to Kekfin and Engineering Plastics for doing that for me. Kekfin's poll results were almost exactly the same as mine, but with more total votes. 93% of 3,200 people voted yes on their survey they would wish more. Engineering Plastics was a little more interesting because their channel may have a demographic of Genshin players that are more likely to spend money to get what they want, so changing the system would not make those people, whales that is, wish any more regardless, right? Which is to say, I feel that the surveying engineering plastics community is more likely to have people that would vote no, which is good for the purpose of diversifying the sample size for the data set to support my conclusion, so I'm not biasing towards yes answers. Turns out, though, it really wasn't that different. 88% of a whopping 17,000 people voted yes on engineering plastics poll as well. All in all, these three polls heavily support the idea that at least a large chunk of the Genshin player base would wish more if they had a way to guarantee getting specific 4-stars, rather than the complete RNG system that currently exists in the game. The only way this data would not support my argument that Hoyoverse could stand to make more money with a new system would then be if you disagree with my base premise that Genshin Impact makes Hoyoverse more money, the more players wish in general. I don't really know how you could then argue the Genshin makes money if it's not based around the central idea that the more people wish, the more likely they are to spend money. But feel free to throw your ideas in the comments if you think I'm wrong. Let's get back on track though. Even if only a small percentage of the 90% of the player base that said they would wish more in the surveys ended up actually spending money as a result of implementing this hypothetical epitomized path for 4-star characters, it is still more than enough to support my argument of such a system being a win-win for everyone, because all that's important is knowing that some people would spend more with such a system, not exactly how much more. This moves us on to the next question we need to ask. How much more money would Hoyoverse stand to lose by changing the existing system? Because of course, if changing the current system stands to lose Hoyoverse more money than they'd make from more players wishing more often, they would not be monetarily incentivized to change the current system, even if it benefits players. Now, in order to help guide explaining how this is not the case, I will actually cut to the conclusion first. Since Hoyoverse can control how exactly they would want a guarantee system for 4-star characters to function, they can also control the average rate of character acquisition to be such that they can make the new system lose them less than or equivalent to how much they would gain from more players wishing. To prove this, we first need to understand some basic ideas in statistics, and then we just need to look at an example implementation of a system to guarantee getting specific 4-star characters, such as the epitomized path selector on the character banner. Doing this should show exactly how Hoyoverse could make a system that does not affect their business and still benefits the player base. So now it's time for math. Ooh. The only statistic that matters for us today is the average rate of acquisition for specific rate-up 4-star characters, because that's how Hoyo makes the most money. Earlier in this video, I already discussed the base rates for getting 4-star characters, and I found this great video from TenTen that goes over 4-star acquisition rates in detail, which I will link below. You should go watch TenTen's video in full, but basically what they did is they made a Python script to factor in the 4-star pity and guarantee system to find a distribution curve determining how long it would take to get a C6 4-star character on average. This is the distribution curve made by TenTen that simulated 4-star polls for how often it takes to get any C6 4-star, and then this is the curve they got for a specific 4-star, which is more what we care about today. For us, the important other number that we are using from TenTen's data is that it takes on average 245 polls to get a specific C6 4-star character. You can then divide this result by the 7 copies you need to get a character to C6 to determine that you would expect to get 1 copy of a specific rate-up 4-star character every 35 polls on average. 35 polls converts to about $70 USD if you had no free in-game resources to use at all. Now, this video is about how painful the complete RNG of getting rate-up 4-stars is in comparison to 5-stars, so wouldn't knowing 35 polls is the average number to get a specific 4-star just put into context how lucky or unlucky any individual's wishes for a specific 4-star are? Yes, it does do that, of course, but the average is actually the primary factor in determining a framework to understand how much money Hoyoverse makes from 4-star characters. To illustrate this, we need to go back to the distribution curve from TenTen's video. What I'm going to talk about from here is basics of statistics theory, namely distribution curves and the law of large numbers, which is an overly dramatic way to describe how observed statistics in reality trend towards expected averages the more times you observe some statistically based occurrence happening. As a simple example, if you flip a coin twice, it isn't that unlikely that you get the same side twice in a row, despite expecting that on average you'd expect heads once and tails once. But the more you flip coins, the more you will see the observed results trend towards 50% heads and 50% tails. The law of large numbers is why in TenTen's video he ran his program 10,000 times, and each time it gave almost exactly the same average. Feel free to go read the Wikipedia article more on the law of large numbers if you want to understand it more, but it's a pretty basic idea in statistical theory. So, back to Genshin. How unlikely or likely the different results are for pulling 4-star characters is exactly what the distribution curve from earlier illustrates for us. So, to explain this better, I'm going to go off script and use the magic of Microsoft Paint to illustrate some specific concepts using TenTen's curve. So, this is the curve from TenTen's video that shows how many pulls over simulated runs it took to get a C6 4-star character, a specific C6 4-star character. So this would be like if you are trying to pull for C6 Freminette on Zhongli's current banner, right? This is a distribution curve of, I believe, 10,000 total summons. This is simulated data, of course, from TenTen's program. But this is about the same as what you would expect this data to look like if you just randomly sampled 10,000 Genshin players that were wishing for a specific C6 4-star, right? 10,000 being not that many samples is why you see like so many like jaggedness, because normally with a distribution curve, the more data you have, the more smooth you'd expect the curve to be, right? So like the closer you would see the curve to trend something like towards what this red line is, right? The more and more data you have, the more it would trend towards that. So on the level of Hoyoverse, who, you know, they have the data on how many summons it took every single player to get a C6 4-star, they would be able to make graphs like these that are much more smooth and don't have like this jaggedness. They would look much more close to what this red line establishes, right? All right, so the biggest important things to understand about this graph other than that is the axis. So the x-axis down here is really easy to understand, right? It's the number of pulls. So that's how many pulls it took for someone to get a specific C6 4-star. So we'll continue using the example of Freminet, right? So you can see the ones over here. You know, these people are the unlucky people that took, you know, 500 to 600 summons to get a C6 4-star. And then there's, you know, over here, there's the lucky people that it took, you know, around 100 summons or less to get a C6 4-star. The y-axis, number of trials, the reason TenTen labeled this number of trials is because it was simulated trials. If this were real-world data, you'd say like number of players on the y-axis, right? So you can swap out trials for players is functionally equivalent here for the sake of what I'm discussing. In this example, the average amount of money they make from anyone spending money to get a 4-star is about $70 per copy of a 4-star. And that $70 is, again, just the average 35 times 2. And you remember the law of large numbers? Hoyoverse's real data is far larger than the number of trials this curve shows, which means the average trends even closer to the expected number. Meaning for Hoyoverse, on a business money-making level, they first and foremost care about the average, not all the outliers of people getting unlucky that make them a few dollars more. Those outliers do make them extra money, of course, but the majority of the money is all here. And the way Hoyo can increase the amount of money they make is not by screwing people over with RNG and like getting more people here, because that's not statistically likely. The way that Hoyo makes more money is by increasing the total number of people that are wishing. The curve would look the same if more people wish, but instead the scale on the y-axis over here, this scale that only goes up to 70, this would go to 20,000 players, right? The more people wish, the more of a big chunk you have here where the majority of wishes are, which is where Hoyo can make more money. Hoyo makes money closer to the average rate per 4-star character that someone is paying money to get, rather than here, right? People so often focus on Hoyo makes so much money over here, but that does not matter to them. So now we go back to how 90% of over 20,000 Genshin players said they would wish more if there was a guarantee system in place. How would a guarantee system change the curve, right? Because if this curve is how much money Hoyo makes, we need to figure out how a guarantee system would affect this curve. And this might seem complicated to do, but it's actually very easy. So let's theorize if Hoyo implemented, for example, some variation of an epitomized path that currently exists for weapon banner. I said this before in the video, but I'm going to repeat it again. I imagine this would look something like get 3 4-stars that are not what you selected, and then the next 4-star you get is guaranteed to be the one of your choice, which would in-game translate to the worst case scenario for how many wishes it takes to get a specific 4-star to be 40 wishes, right? So worst case scenario, it takes 40 wishes to get the specific character you chose on like this hypothetical epitomized path, right? And that number comes from the fact that you're guaranteed a 4-star every 10 pull. So if you don't get the character you selected once, don't get the character you selected in the second 10 pull, don't get the character selected after 30 pulls, then you do 10 more pulls. The worst case scenario is 40 equals, you know, under this system, 40 would be Freminet, right? 40 gets you your Freminet. So back to how an epitomized path would affect this curve. Remember, this data all comes from the average rates of acquisition to acquire a specific 4-star character. We did not change that, right? A guarantee system simply would make it so The worst case scenario is that you guarantee getting the character you chose every 40 pulls. That's what the guarantee system would do, right? It does not change the average. The average in this case for for this data, right? The average in this data is 35 per 4-star, right? Which this is data for C6, so 35 translate to 245, which is about right here, right? Since we didn't change the base rates of acquisition, this general distribution curve would stay the same, except the guarantee system provides a cutoff. The guarantee system in this context would mean that since it takes no more than 40 pulls to guarantee getting a 4-star in this example, if we multiply that out by the 7 copies you would need for a C6, 7 times 40 is of course 280. It means there would be a cutoff point at 280, which that's about a 300, right? So that means that the amount of money that Hoyo would lose is over here. And that seems like a lot at this 40 mark, right? But again, this is just my hypothetical. I'm suggesting a epitomized pass system that guarantees a 4-star after you don't get 3 in a row, largely as an example for like an ideal for me. That's what I personally would like to see. I'd like to see being able to guarantee getting a 4-star character every 40 pulls, right? Of my choice, to be clear. Now this would cut off a big pool of potential money that Hoyo could make, right? It would cut off everything past this line right here, which that's potentially a lot of money. But remember, it's not money Hoyo is potentially losing. But this is not money that's Hoyo's completely losing, right? Because all of this data that's over here, all of this over here, instead of it being over here, it would all, because of the guarantee system, it would pile it all on top of the very end over here, right? So these people that spent, 350 pulls to get C6 Freminet, instead, they would have only had to spend 280 because it would have been impossible for them to get any more than 40 per copy of Freminet, right? Which means they would go onto the pile over here. So what the graph would end up looking like is you basically axe off everything past to the 280 mark in this hypothetical system. And now there is, let's go to blue here. And now there is a big old bar that just goes whoop off the graph, right? Because all the people that would have taken more than 280 now took exactly 280. But that's still wishes that had to be spent to get them, right? And if people spent money, that's still money that had to go to Hoyo, right? So Hoyo's not losing the entirety of this money in such a system. What I'm trying to illustrate here is that adding a guarantee system essentially axes off the outliers, right? You add a guarantee system that is above the average rate of character acquisition, and all it does is add a cutoff point on this graph, right? And it moves anyone that might have taken 600 to move them over here, right? That's what it does in this graph. So Hoyo does lose money. But remember, Hoyoverse can control how they implement a guarantee system. And Hoyoverse has the data. They have much better data than me. They have the exact data for how much money they make on 4-star characters. Hoyoverse has the exact data, more accurate data, for how much money they could make if more people wished more because of a guarantee system existing, right? So Hoyo has the power and all the data they need to design a system that is balanced such that they can implement a guarantee system that might not be, where it guarantees 1 Freminet every 40 wishes, but let's say it guarantees 1 Freminet every 50 wishes. 50 times 7 is 350. So that means instead of this line right here being the cutoff point, now the cutoff point is 350. 7 times 50 is 350. So that means everyone past here is cut off, which means Hoyo makes a bit more money from the people that got unlucky in the 300 to 350 range, right? But maybe that's not the right balance for Hoyo. Let's say for Hoyo to have a guarantee system that balances out how much money they may lose from, these people not existing. Let's say it's something terrible, which I would really not like to see the system exist like I'm suggesting. But let's say they have a guarantee system that functionally means you can only guarantee getting the 4-star of your choice every 70 pulls, right? Now we're seeing the off-scriptness a little bit as I ramble more. So 70 pulls to guarantee a Freminette, right? So 70 times 7 is 490, meaning they'd only cut off everything here. And again, I illustrated, hopefully obviously, this is not that much money, right? This section over here, if they implemented something terrible where they only guaranteed getting the 4-star of your choice every 70 pulls, that would not be that great of a system for the players, but it would be better than nothing. It would be better than nothing, because again, it at least means we're operating on known quantities as players, right? Because I could know that, all right, it's going to take 70 pulls to get Freminette. I've done 50 pulls, haven't gotten Freminette. I know that I can do 20 more pulls and get my Freminette, right? I can weigh the risks properly then. As it is now, I could do 100 more pulls and never get a Freminette, right? So any kind of guarantee system, literally any kind of guarantee system is better than none. And the point being is that even if Hoyo implements something really terrible, like a system that only guarantees a character every 70 pulls, which means only the extremities of outliers, where people had to spend 500 wishes plus to get a character, a C6 character, only they would get added on top, and they get added on top, remember, to the 490 wish mark, which means Hoyo's still making a lot of money from these people, right? That's essentially what the guarantee system would do. But again, it does not affect the majority here, right? So Hoyo can put this wherever the heck they want. If I had to guess, just like gauging based on the fact that people would wish more, and wishing more means more money can be made from Hoyo, I would guess it would probably in reality end up being somewhere around the 50 pull mark. Because I think, you know, if the line is right here, right, and this amount is cut off and all of these people get thrown over here, that would be something that I think is a good balance, where Hoyo would still make a lot of money, but so many more people would wish. 90% of the player base said they would wish more if they could guarantee getting a 4-star character. So if we could guarantee getting one Freminette every 50 pulls, it just pulls these money spenders, right? Or non-money spenders, because you might have just saved a ton of wishes and used them all for a 4-star, and just dumps them somewhere else in the graph, right? So yes, Hoyo makes less money from the outliers, but they can balance exactly how they want a guarantee system to be placed. They can place the guarantee system here, they can place it here, they can place it here, they can place it here. Hoyo is the one that can control where they want the guarantee system to cut off the outliers, such that it balances how much more money they could potentially gain from more people wishing in general. I've repeated myself a lot here. I don't know exactly what I'm going to edit it down to, but I hope I've illustrated at least that Hoyo is the one that controls this on a map level. If they can make more money from more people wishing, they can implement a system that, yes, would lose them a small amount of money, but would at bare minimum balance out depending on where they put the guarantee system. And if they want to be jerks about it, they can put the guarantee system at 60 pulls to guarantee a particular character, or 70. I hope they wouldn't. I hope they throw the player base a bone and make it more generous than that. But it can be a win for them and a win for the player base, because any system to guarantee 4 stars is a win for the player base. Literally any. Alright, back on script now. At this point, I feel like I've established a fairly strong argument for how it would be a win-win for Genshin players and Hoyoverse as a business to implement a system that can guarantee getting a 4-star. And if you agree with everything I have discussed in this video, it begs a final, very important question. If it is so obviously a win-win, why the f is a system to guarantee 4-star characters not already in the game? I think answering this is actually pretty simple. Where I live, there's a common turn of phrase: if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Why spend effort changing something when what you currently have is functional? From Hoyoverse's point of view, the current system in acquiring 4 stars in Genshin functions, and their wishing system is the basis of how their entire company makes a lot of money. So, of course, they're not going to be very naturally inclined to change things. Especially if, from Hoyo's point of view, the player base itself seems fine with it, which is actually the last thing I want to address in this video. The sentiment I always see without fail when it comes to having discussed this issue in particular within my community, or having other problems players have with Genshin that they discuss, is generally that Hoyoverse does not listen to player feedback. This usually comes in the form of statements that explicitly or implicitly say something along the lines of, why should I even request they change this or care about it since they never listen to anything players want? Now, while I share that it feels like they don't listen to the player base much, saying that Hoyoverse ignores the player base is just false, and in my opinion, saying this all the time in response to any kind of serious discussion online is just trapping yourself into having a perspective that results in a self-fulfilling prophecies sort of mentality where you don't think Hoyoverse listens, so you don't bother to submit good feedback on things because, they don't listen, why bother? And because you don't bother, Hoyoverse never sees any of your ideas, opinions on things that you'd like to see changed. And I know you might say, oh, well, I say that in Discord or on Twitter or Reddit or whatever, but in the feedback I submit these thoughts and they clearly don't listen. The thing is, Hoyo, doesn't just look at feedback from their feedback forums. They look at feedback in general sentiments around the community online too, right? Their feedback forms in-game are generally more specific things, like what did you think about this specific version, rather than more broad things about the game. And they do definitely pay attention to more broad conversation about the game. Thinking Hoyoverse doesn't listen at all is just a defeatist attitude that perpetuates something untrue. In the 3.0 patches, Hoyoverse added underground indicators to waypoints. And in version 4.0, they expanded it so we even have underground multi-layer maps for things in the game. That's awesome. They also already announced that they're going to change the much maligned daily commission system in version 4.1. Hoyoverse has started making these dev discussion posts about changes they're making, which is them responding to player feedback. They do listen. It is false to say they don't. When Yaimiko first released, they made changes to her kit and subsequently reversed them, but they pretended the initial change was a bug fix for some reason. But regardless, all these are changes that happened due to player feedback and things they were seeing people talk about in the community. And I know it really doesn't feel like Hoyoverse changes much based on player feedback, since they traditionally have been very not transparent about their decision-making process and all the things they do in-game, or because maybe they just haven't changed the things you wanted, but they have changed things. I also think the dev discussion posts are a really big step in the right direction, in my opinion. Point being, it's just untrue to say that Hoyoverse doesn't listen at all. Hoyo just doesn't communicate their operation in ways that makes you as a player feel like they do. I think Hoyoverse could be much better at changing things players would like to see in Genshin, as basic changes that make the game more enjoyable way too few and far between. But they have made changes, so I really don't like seeing people perpetuate the defeatist mentality that it's pointless to ask them to change something because they don't listen. I know I've repeated myself so many times for many of my things I've talked about in this video, by the way, but it's because repetition is the key to success. Anyhow, most notably, for the purposes of this video, Hoyoverse has actually changed the wishing system in the past as well, which is when they added the epitomized path for the weapon banner in the first place. Getting 5-star weapons in this game used to be the same complete RNG horror show that 4 stars are, but just even worse. Do you really think that change would have happened if they were completely unwilling to change anything at all? If Hoyoverse did it once, they can do it again. But if there are not enough people demanding changes, to change the status quo, why would they ever do it, right? There needs to be a demand to justify it. Especially when you think about the fact that Hoyoverse is a Chinese-operated company, and therefore people at the company probably think more collectivistically rather than individualistically on a cultural level, right? Which is to say that it's not that surprising that internally they would be averse to changing something that doesn't seem broken. Why would Hoyoverse be naturally inclined to change a core aspect of their monetization system if there's not really that many people saying it's broken to convince them that it's worthwhile? Instead, they just see people online saying, it's never going to change, why bother? So please, for the love of everything, stop shooting yourself in the foot with the mentality that it's pointless to request changes to the game just because you feel like they're not listening. What we need to do as Genshin players is tell them over and over and over again that the current system is broken. It is broken, Hoyoverse. So please fix it. Okay, so I don't want to end the video on that dramatic of a note, so I want to add one last thing. My dream for this video is just that it convinces the Genshin community and Hoyoverse in turn that it makes no sense for them not to implement a guarantee system in some form, which just requires people, that is to say, you, dear viewer, just seriously talking about it, rather than, you know, I've ranted enough. So anyways, please just jump to the comments and discuss everything I talked about. Let me know if something didn't make sense or if I'm completely wrong. Ultimately, I just want people to talk about the issue for real, and maybe if we're lucky, some change might come of it. Who knows? At the end of the day, I just made this video because wishing for 4 stars... I am in a hole. Wishing for 4 stars in Genshin is the worst feeling I can experience while playing this game. And I just don't ever want to feel sick to my stomach when playing a video game I enjoy.